lot of the work that I do with my clients is about making this mind transition from the idea I got to find a job to I've got to provide a value.
Folks, today we're going to talk about something that probably a lot of you are actually dealing with right this very moment. How do we make that career change, either job change or career change, if we're a mid to late season professional? So, we're maybe the latter portion of our career and we're looking for another job, or maybe we've been let go, or we've decided we want to do something different, or we're not quite ready to retire. How do we make that pivot? So I'm really excited. Our guest today is an expert in the space. His name is John Tarnoff. He's an executive, a career transition coach, speaker, and author, and he supports mid and late career professionals in defining, planning, and basically making this pivot. He's also the author of the best-selling book, Boomer Reinvention, How to Create Your Dream Career Over 50. And he's created courses around all this. So our conversation was really, really good, and actually was very tight because we anchored it around three main factors, which really play into limiting our ability to make these moves. And then, of course, we solved for each factor. So listen real close to John's conversation with me. Take some notes. I took mine. And at the end of our conversation, I'll share with you some of the highlights and things you can start doing today to make this pivot successful.
The Workplace Therapist Show is sponsored by the Leadership Foundry. Bringing a cutting-edge, real-world approach to leadership development, the Leadership Foundry partners with each client organization to create a custom-tailored experience, virtual or in person, that combines innovative leadership content, world-class facilitators, and one-on-one coaching to ensure your leaders have everything they need to grow and thrive. To find out more and to design your one-of-a-kind program, visit myleadershipfoundry.com.
Okay, I'm really excited about our topic here today. We're going to talk about something that a lot of folks are dealing with right now. I mean, in the middle of it right now. How do we successfully transition into a new role, new job, new career when we're maybe mid to late career? How do we make that kind of happen? And so to help us, I've got this wonderful expert. I got John Tarnoff on the phone today. John, I'm so excited with you today, coming on the show. So talk to us a little bit about what got you so excited about this particular topic, because it's such a unique topic, and yet so many people are dealing with it and have been dealing with it for years. So what's kind of been your journey that ultimately got you here, and how do you kind of bring this to life for folks?
Well, it's a very personal journey, and I didn't start out in the people business, in HR or recruiting, or what is typically a background for someone who is a career coach. I started out as an executive in the entertainment business and as a film producer. Did that for about 35 years here in Los Angeles. And what I realized in retrospect is that business prepared me to survive, if not thrive, in a volatile business. Mm-hmm. And what I've observed is that the rest of the world has become today as volatile as the entertainment business was then and has always been. And I hit a wall in my career around the time I hit age 50. And I had a startup during the tech bubble in the 90s, and I had worked at studios and produced films before that. And I had hit the end of that road when the market crashed and all of the financing went away and the customers went away. In the fall of 2001, I thought, well, what am I going to do now? And the pivot that I made was to go back to school. And interestingly, you and I have a bit of a parallel along these lines. And I went back to school to earn a psychology degree, a master's degree in spiritual psychology, which is a branch of positive psychology that is really focused on forgiveness and healing and self-responsibility as a path to self-knowledge and personal growth. And I did the program because I wanted to learn more about myself. I wasn't necessarily interested in getting into this field, ironic as it turns out. But strangely enough, that experience brought me back into entertainment. And I had this amazing run in the 2000s working for DreamWorks Animation in a people role. And that was the crazy thing about it. So when my time at DreamWorks was up, I was kind of more interested in pursuing more of this kind of work in education and training. They were kind of doubling down on the film production. and all of the new stuff that they had been engaged in that I had really led for them was done, I moved on and within a couple of years found this niche at this intersection of people over 50, career reinvention, the idea of being more resilient in a more volatile market, and taking my psychology skills and my resilience from having been fired, as I like to say, 39% of the time in my entertainment career, and applying that to help people who were going through these transitions, which are increasingly fraught for people over 50.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about that, because we could say right now in this marketplace, gosh, career transitions, reinventing yourself, that could apply to a 25-year-old as much as it could to a 55-year-old. But what do you see, or what have you seen as some of the big challenges for folks over 50?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, yes, I think a lot of what I work on applies across the board. And I have had people come up to me after I've been speaking, or they're on a call, and they say, you talk about this for people over 50, but I'm 35 and this applies completely to what I'm doing. And I have wound up coaching people as young as in their early 30s who are interested in bulletproofing their career. But I think what is particularly relevant to people over 50 are three factors that I think are important to understand about that age range, that bracket. And the first force is inertia. We kind of get to a point where we think it's going to continue to go the way it's gone. We are on this steady state. We get to a certain level in our career where we have this mastery, accomplishment. And on some level, we think, well, this is the way it's going to go. I'm just going to go all the way until I retire. But it doesn't work that way in today's economy, because you have to continually step up and find that next thing. And employers, frankly, and I'm sure you observe this a lot, are scared. It's a very, very scary environment for companies. And you can look at all the great run-ups on Wall Street and all the profit taking and all that. But when it comes to staff, it's expensive. It's getting more expensive. It's hard to understand and know who the right person is for the right fit. A lot of dysfunction, as you talk about in your work in the workplace. So it's no longer good enough for someone in this position to say, okay, I'm just going to coast. Can't do it anymore. You have to wake up to that. The second factor is longevity. And we are now living much, much longer than our parents. If you turn 65 today, you have almost a 25% chance of living past 90. And every year you live past 65 improves your chances of living past 90. So you have to think, my God, if I'm thinking about retiring at 60, do I want a 30-year retirement? What's that going to look like? Am I going to be happy with that? Am I going to be stimulated with that? Am I going to find enough meaning and purpose in that? And by the way, can I afford that? And that is a factor which most people underestimate. And I've studied a lot of the surveys on this, and people are just completely batty about overestimating their chances of affording their retirement. And a lot of people, you're finding, are going back to work or trying to go back to work. And I'll talk about the third factor right now, because they realize, oh my God, I can't afford this, right? Social Security is only getting me a little bit out of the box. It's covering some basics, but I can't live on Social Security. And I don't have enough savings, because most people don't have enough savings to retire. That's a whole other topic. But I'll say the third element here is ageism, and kind of leaving the best for last. It is real. It is prevalent. We have a new bill as of this point in November 2021 in Congress to reinforce the ADEA, the Age Discrimination and Employment Act of 1967, which has been poorly enforced. The number of complaints to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission are skyrocketing. So it's a real problem. And it's something that people over 50 are going to deal with one way or another. There is a stat, and I'll leave you with this one. from ProPublica and the Urban Institute from a couple of years ago. It says that 50%, over 50%, just slightly over 50% of everyone over 50 will lose their job, not by their own doing. So if you think you're secure in that position that you've been in for 20 years with a company that you love and it seems to love you, think again. Circumstances change and you may be out on the street. So you're going to have to deal with this. So that is the long-winded answer to your question about why am I focused on careers over 50.
Yeah, really, really interesting, John. So let's talk about how do we, I actually think we could kind of overcome some of these like point by point. So let's talk about strategies for each of them. Okay,
sure.
So the first one you talked about was inertia.
Yes.
Get into that routine. I can almost see if we solve for this, it might even help us with the third one. But we'll get there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. How to you get somebody who's in inertia, and I've seen this happen too. Sometimes someone just gets really comfortable, or the way that they thought the world worked was, okay, now I just got promoted to VP. I've arrived. I can kind of coast for the next 5 years. Sometimes that kind of is the mindset, and then that causes some challenges.
Sure.
How do you help people overcome that? How can we overcome that?
Right. It's a mindset shift, and the mindset shift that we have to overcome is exactly what you're alluding to, this idea that I have arrived, that I have met a goal. And we have to be constantly moving into what a lot of people call the growth mindset, which is having a beginner's mind, really reevaluating every day what you think is true. In my coaching practice, one of the first things that I work on with clients is the concept of reframing limiting beliefs. And, we all go in our lives, we strive for comfort and predictability. And we know that we're supposed to challenge ourselves and we're supposed to get out of our comfort zones. But the truth is that that is being reinforced in us. We are taught to not rock the boat, not make changes, to go along to get along. And I think we have to find this happy medium between effective collaboration and cooperation, but also making a greater contribution, challenging ourselves to make a greater contribution beyond what it is that we are doing today. So you can start by simply writing that good old list of pros and cons. All the things that you think you do well in your job, all the things that you think you could improve on in your job. Start doing a self 360 before HR gets to you with their annual review, right? Keep a log, keep a daily journal. I really encourage everyone to do this, of all of the challenges, the insights, the plans that you're making, your intention for the day. You got to step it up and realize that you are in a very, very different and much more competitive environment. So build some healthy habits around self-reflection, self-evaluation, and you'll start to see opportunities. And very often I advocate to clients who come to me and say, I hate my job, gotta get a new job. There may be an opportunity to reinvent your job and create new purpose, new meaning, new traction, and new recognition from your colleagues about your value if you start this process.
Yeah. I love what you said. The image immediately came to mind. It's like going to the resilience gym. It's like you need to start, because you've been hanging out on the couch too long. Go to the resilience gym, start working those muscles, and you'll get stronger. You'll get more flexible, and you're going to be able to do new things you didn't think you could do. But it's going to hurt in the beginning. Right. But it's a good hurt.
It's a good hurt.
It means you're getting stronger.
Right. And back to I think that's a great analogy of the athletic analogy. Get a coach. Have to do a plug for the coaches.
right. You won't hear a complaint here.
Right. But also get a buddy, right? You can do this with a buddy. And a lot of that comes down to your willingness to trust your colleagues, trust yourself, go deeper. We are at a really interesting inflection point, I think, in terms of our business culture regarding transparency, and we see this with younger generations very specifically. Transparency, accountability, and this idea that to my generation seems completely absurd that and we're seeing this now across the workplace, where Gen X is demanding that management weigh in on the important issues of the day and take a stand on cultural issues, social issues, political issues that are relevant to them as individuals, not just as employees. And so we have to recognize that this is a force that's moving through our culture and our business culture, and we have to step up to that.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so let's take on number two. Number two is longevity. So this idea that, gosh, if I retire at 60, 65, I could have a 30-year retirement run here. And can I afford that? Do I want to do that? Mm-hmm. How do we rethink that?
Well, I think that it has something to do with, number one, with the growth mindset. But I also think that it requires, as part of that reframing, a sense of, and this relates actually into ageism, a new sense of awareness and pride about what it means to age. Mm-hmm. And that we are no longer in a world where 60 is, or 65 is old. But at the same time, we don't want to pretend that we're not old. So I get into arguments with people about these concepts like 60 is the new 50, 70 is the new 60.
Interesting.
This concept of being ageless. Oh, you look great. You're ageless. Like age doesn't matter. Like age is irrelevant. Like you're actually younger than you are. I think it's important to acknowledge our age and to celebrate our age. And if we've got time, I'm going to relate a really little important story for me. I was in the formative part of this process, maybe 10 years or so ago. I'm having a sleepless night. I'm up at 1 or 2 in the morning. I flip on the TV and there's an Oprah rerun. And there's Maya Angelou on, and she's talking, and Oprah says, "You've just turned 80. What is it like to be 80? And Maya Angelou gets this amazingly transfixed expression on her face, and she looks out in the audience and she says, "Oh, I want all of you in the audience to live until your 80s. She said, "It's the most amazing time." She said, "I thought my 70s were great. The 80s are amazing." And I thought to myself, that's what I want, right? Mm-hmm. I want to wake up at 80 and feel this insane sense of appreciation, gratitude, and wonder about life, as opposed to this prevailing trope in our culture, which is you're declining, right? And everyone is kind of feeling sorry for you and making accommodations for you because you're getting old. And look, I'm not denying the fact that the body starts to decline, but the mind and the spirit get incredibly strong at this period if you're willing to allow it and to acknowledge it and to own it.
Yeah, beautiful. So as you were talking, maybe think of something. I actually had a call with a client this week. He's a CEO of a real estate company. He's a fairly younger guy in his late 40s, and he's got some leaders in their mid to late 30s that are needing some seasoning. And the company's growing. And he said to me, this has been our conversation. He said, "You know what I would love to do? If I could wave a magic wand, I'd love to hire a CFO who is maybe 60, 65, who has kind of who maybe doesn't want to do, maybe wants to do full time, but is also way open to just being," you've probably heard this term before. This is maybe a new term for some of my listeners, a fractional CFO.
Yes.
So someone who wants to just maybe work 2 or 3 days a week can run that function, help grow our business, but also grow all these leaders that just need maturing.
Yep.
Because they don't, I can't spend all my time coaching these folks. I got to run a business, but they need a lot of coaching.
Can we clone this guy?
Yeah. So I love that idea, because sometimes I think when people think, "Oh, I'm 65 now, I got to find another full-time job." Well, you might need to, but you don't have to. You can find things like fractional jobs, which are basically part-time leaders that come in.
Yep.
So I'd love to get your perspective on that, because you've probably you've seen that before or talked about that before.
Well, and this goes back to actually to inertia, to a way of addressing inertia, which is to kind of rethink this idea of what it is to work, right? And the beauty of getting older and having this kind of sense of authority, and I would say that, to anyone out there who is over 50, you may have noticed this, that people are looking at you differently. And you don't have to feel like, "Oh my God, they're looking at me like I'm old." They actually might be looking at you with a sense of awe and wonder that you have experienced all this stuff, and they may be a little intimidated which goes to the third thing, ageism, which we'll talk about in a sec. But this idea of the fractional freelance consulting career in your specialty is a really key element. And I'm not sure where this sprinkles in here, but partially this is the addressing of the ageism question. How do you deal with this? A lot of this has to do with value proposition and your willingness to, with everything that you know and you can do, really drill down on that one niche value that you provide the best in your career to potential employers, clients, customers. And I would say that your ability to drill down on that and define it and own it is going to be the key to your second act career, regardless of how you end up getting paid, whether you're a 1099 at the end of the year, or you're a W-2, or you're a mixture of both. It is a much more modular approach to career. And you find the calling based on the need that you're filling, and you adjust to that wherever that is. And a lot of the work that I do with my clients is about making this mind transition from the idea, I got to find a job, to I've got to provide a value.
That's beautiful. I think that's a great way to kind of focus, which then allows you to think about those fractional or consulting or part-time things, if that's what you want, or you can find something full-time too. Well, all right. So let's talk about the big one, ageism. How about this one? What are some things we can do to either overcome that, solve for that, minimize that? Yeah.
Well, you can't go through the front door because you're going to get it. If you go through the conventional recruiting system, you're going to hit ageism. It's just a fact of life. And here's a point. Think about, if you're out looking for a job right now, think about all the job postings that you're seeing online. How many of them are looking for 25 years of experience? I would say 0. They are looking for 7 years, 10 years, maybe they're looking for 15 years of experience. And a lot of people say, well, I'm applying for this job. I can do this job. Why aren't they interested in hiring me? Well, the fact is, if you've just come out of a job that you've been doing for the last 15 years, and you're trying to apply to a job that looks very much like that one, guess what? They want someone who is 15 years younger than you and 15 years cheaper than you to do that job, just like they hired you. So you've got to upgrade your sense of what it is that you do, the value that you provide. You've got to get clearer and more niched on that. And you have to avoid and evade the recruiting and hiring system and tap into the hidden job market. The hidden job market, as you know, and I'm sure most of your listeners know, is where 80% or more of hiring actually takes place. It is the referral market. People are being internally hired, or they're being hired through external referrals. And you want to shift your focus to your network in order to figure out what's out there, who can help you, and set up the referral system so that you are plugged into people, not positions. And that's the primary way in which you're going to do it. And you're going to find an absolutely unexpected solution and landing pad from doing it that way.
Yeah, beautiful. It makes total sense to me. As you were talking, it made me think of a conversation I had with a friend of mine in executive search some years ago. And he said, we can place just about anybody, but the hardest candidate to place is someone who's been in the same job, in the same company for 10 years or more.
Yep.
Very difficult because they're viewed as kind of rigid, inflexible, not cutting edge, and it's hard to place that person.
Yep.
So if that's you and you're listening to this and you're thinking, I've been doing the same job, same place for 10 years or more, how can you kind of mix that up? How can you add some things to kind of going back to the first conversation around, get yourself more flexible, right, and build different muscles?
But I also think you can flip that around. If you can identify that very useful, sought after value proposition out of everything that you've done for the last 10 years, and you see a real need for it, and you have a really clear customer, as it were, in mind, whether that's an employer or a client, you can overcome that perceived longevity deficit and turn that to your advantage by saying, this is an expertise that I have honed for the last 10 years, and you have this problem, I'm solving it. And that gets into your fractional CFO argument as well. if there are specific things that fractional CFO does, there are 5 things on that menu that he or she does, there are going to be businesses that want to hire that.
Right.
So be that solution.
Yeah, maybe think, shift yourself from maybe thinking of yourself as a general practitioner as to a surgeon.
Absolutely.
It's like, I'm really great at fixing this problem, hire me for this problem, and I can help you with it.
Right. And use your general knowledge and experience to fuel the specialization, because that makes you completely unbeatable. As a specialist with generalized knowledge of contiguous areas of responsibility and effectiveness, oh my God, you're bulletproof.
Yeah, you can anticipate what's around the corner. Yeah, exactly. That's great. Okay, all right. So great points. Now I want to drive this. I'm going to land our plane here by talking about today. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions for you about today. So here we sit today, and as we're recording this, it's kind of November 2021. So my first one. So what's interesting is we talk about the over 50 crowd. In the past, we historically said, "Oh, that's the boomers." It's the boomers, and it's now Gen X. I mean, our millennials are into their 40s.
That's right.
So
running the show.
So do you see any differences when you think about generations? So when you think about, someone who's from the boomer generation that's kind of moved into the 50s versus someone from the Gen X, do you see any differences in how things are approached, or is the differences so subtle it really doesn't matter?
I tend to think towards the latter. I think there are differences in style rather than substance. I'm sure you've been reading about, there's a few articles recently about how millennials are now tearing their hair out at Gen X demands. And it just kind of goes to the seasonality of this, and how everything old is new again. And yeah, now that millennials are in positions of leadership and responsibility, they're having to deal with young people coming in with different ideas, just as they had different ideas coming in. I think it's healthy for the economy because we need to refresh the ways in which we approach business and solutions and problem solving. And I think there's a tremendous amount of value to listen to and incorporate and pay attention to new ideas and new styles coming in because that's the world that we're going towards.
Yeah. So I want to add one thing. This is just a perspective that I've seen that I'm really passionate about. When I see the healthiest organizations, they've got Gen Z, they've got millennials, they've got Gen X, and they've got boomers.
That's right.
And it actually quiets down a lot of the drama. When I see it all Gen Z or all millennial organization, full of drama all over the place. The balance of the generations really creates just a level of overall maturity and respect for different perspectives that I wish more organizations had. I know I'm probably preaching to the choir on this one, John.
Oh, absolutely. So just another plug here. So I've done 4 courses on LinkedIn now about the multi-generational workforce, reporting to an older supervisor, reporting to a younger supervisor, and most recently about preparing for career transition over 50. And the one that is relevant to this point you're making is a course about the multi-generational workforce and how to affect a multi-generational workforce and use age as a diversity, equity, and inclusion factor in the training and the cultural work that companies are doing.
Yeah, beautiful. So that segues me into my last final question for us today. So today, what are trends or patterns you see today right now as you think about the tight labor market? Is it changing how people are viewing a candidate's age or candidate's background or what they're thinking of as the ideal candidate? Did you see any changes in that way?
I am not yet, but I am hopeful that the great resignation that we are experiencing is giving employers an opportunity to rethink a lot of the ways in which they've been hiring and firing, and that as a result of that, there's going to be a more considered look at the value that a candidate brings to the job beyond the superficial requirements or applicability to the job description or whatever the criteria have been that they're using.
Yeah, it's interesting. Another kind of conversation I had recently. This was more with some frontline supervisors for one of my clients, and they said, we talk about, people coming in on time, leaving on time, doing everything that's asked for them. They said, we expect that as kind of like a regular, just standard job expectation. They said the people we have that do that, that's more like a superpower today. We're just not seeing that in the workplace today.
Right.
Which can be one of the benefits of someone who has more maturity and experience in the working world. They have learned over time the value of simple things like coming in on time, leaving on time, doing everything it's asked of you. The solid citizen is undervalued in many ways, or greatly desired at this point. So I think there's also something to be said for that too.
Absolutely.
Well, John, this was absolutely great. So I ask all my guests this question when we're kind of getting ready to get to the end. What is a life hack you have for us to how we can either have better relationships or better conversations, either at work or at home?
The one thing I want to say on that is a line that I use with people about networking and the process of building business relationships, and that is to always be giving. When we are in need of a job, trying to change positions, there's a bit of a panic that sets in around, oh my God, I need to get some interviews. I need to find some open positions. Can anybody help me? Do you know of anything that's available? And the networking process that I work on with my clients is predicated on the idea that in order to receive, you first have to give. And in a kind of a crazy 80-20 Pareto principle, I really encourage people to give essentially 80% of the time so that they can then receive 20% back. And that means making introductions, engaging with people on their LinkedIn profiles, sharing information, making introductions, doing anything that you can to make the lives and careers of your network better. And if you start off the day with that mindset and proceed from there, you're going to get a lot more back by doing it that way.
John, that's beautiful. One thing I would want to add to this is, it reminds me of another one of my friends in the executive search function. One of their biggest complaints was people only do that when they need something. So don't do it when you're looking for a job. Do it right now. Just make it a habit.
Yep.
Do it all the time. Make it who you are, not just a transactional thing.
Yeah.
So
and one other line on that, which I use, is don't lead with your need.
Oh, that's nice. That rhymes too. So, John, this is great. If people want to learn more about you, your services, your book, just all the ways you're helping people right now navigate this season of their life, where can they go?
They can go to my website, johntarnoff.com. They can find me on LinkedIn. Just look me up at John Tarnoff, connect with me there. This book is called Reinvention, How to Create Your Dream Career Over 50. If you are in this situation, it will give you some really practical skills and tips about the sequence of events that you could take to kind of reframe that mindset and discover that value proposition, connect with your network, and nail that position.
John, awesome. Thanks for coming on the show today. Thanks for all the insights that you gave and the gifts that you provided to all my listeners, and keep up the great work. This is really, really well needed today. And this is going to help us create healthier workplaces, which is what makes me so passionate about this. So thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate all your time.
Thanks for having me on. It's been great.
I thought John was really fantastic. In fact, part of what I think makes John so great is he came from the entertainment industry. So his answers were just so clean and rich and really just gave just the right amount of detail. So he hit those three main points. He said, gosh, there's inertia. That's one. There's longevity. That's the other one. And then there's ageism. That's the third. And he said, with inertia, we just get comfortable. We stay in a role too long, or we think we've arrived and we don't think we need to pivot or change anymore. And he solved for that by saying, we use the analogy of kind of the resilience gym. How do you kind of stretch yourself, take on a growth mindset, a beginner mindset? How do you go in and try new things, find new opportunities to add value? The second one we talked about was longevity. He said, look, we're living so long. There's a high probability you could live up to 90. Do you want a 30-year retirement? And will that be fulfilling for you? Can you even pay your bills doing that? So how do you kind of solve for that? So we also talked about kind of other ways to look at other opportunities. And then we explored the idea of even like a fractional role or a consulting role. Take that one thing you're really, really good at, pivot from being a general practitioner to a surgeon, and how can you add value with that? And the third one we talked about was ageism, which was the common occurrence where he said over 50% of folks 50 years and older are going to lose their job, not because of their own liking. So how do we solve for that? And he said, first of all, constantly make sure you're adding value and you're able to communicate that and you're clear on what that is. But also he said, you've got to build those relationships. You got to make sure you're networking and build those relationships, because you're not going to be pulled top of the pack with your resume when there's job opportunities because of your age. You're going to have to find other opportunities to show that you have all that valuable knowledge and experience. And that's really what we were talking about here today. And we finally landed the plane by talking about the workplace today. And I shared with John something he agreed with, that my experience is the healthiest workplaces have all the generations in a balanced way. There's Gen Z, there's millennials, there's Gen X, and there's boomers. And we're all figuring out a way to learn from each other and respect each other. When you have generations that are too fixated in one group, they become unbalanced and it creates lots of issues. So the goal is, how do we create more of those balanced workplaces? So I hope you took a lot away from this today. I think it's valuable for us at any stage of our career, but particularly true if we're trying to make some of those moves in that latter half, so we continue to add value and continue to be successful.